Hi, kids! Welcome back to Bible Stories for Kids. I'm so happy you're here today. Guess what? We have an amazing adventure to explore, full of surprises, courage, and a big lesson about listening to God. Are you ready? Today's story is about a young man named Jonah and a giant fish that God used in the most unbelievable way. So sit tight, get comfy, and let's dive straight into this wonderful Bible adventure together. Let's go! Jonah was a young man in his late 20s, full of energy, humor, and a warm, determined heart, living in a quiet little town surrounded by hills, tiny farms, and the sound of rushing streams. He loved walking through the markets, listening to children laugh, greeting neighbors, and watching fishermen cast their nets into the sparkling water. Jonah believed in God deeply, but he sometimes struggled with obedience, especially when things felt difficult or scary. One sunny morning, as Jonah sat under a fig tree thinking about life, something extraordinary happened. God spoke to him with a voice gentle like the breeze, yet strong like thunder in the mountains. "Jonah," God said, "I want you to go to Nineveh, a big city far from here. The people there are doing wrong things, hurting each other, ignoring what is good. Go and tell them that they must change their ways." Jonah froze. His heart raced. Nineveh? That place was known for being wild, dangerous, and unfriendly to strangers. Jonah looked around, hoping God was speaking to someone else, but no God meant him. Scared and confused, Jonah shook his head. "Me? Go there? No, I can't do that. They won't listen. They might hurt me. I'm not going." Instead of trusting God, Jonah let fear take over. His mind spun. "I must get away, far away," he thought. So, Jonah grabbed a small bag, packed a little food, and rushed toward the harbor of Joppa, his sandals slapping the dusty road as he hurried past merchants and travelers. The sea breeze hit his face as he reached the large wooden docks, and there he saw a giant ship heading to a place called Tarshish, far, far in the opposite direction of where God told him to go. Without thinking twice, Jonah paid for a seat and climbed onto the ship, avoiding eye contact with everyone, hoping maybe, somehow, he could hide from God. The sailors welcomed him, men with strong arms and wide grins, busy tying ropes and lifting barrels. Jonah forced a smile but felt his stomach twist with guilt. As the sky turned orange and the ship set sail, Jonah slipped below deck and curled up in a quiet corner, whispering, "Maybe if I sleep, all this will go away." But God saw Jonah. God loved him too much to let him run away, because God knew Jonah had an important mission, one that could save an entire city. The sea was calm at first, gently rocking the ship like a cradle. But suddenly, without warning, the wind howled like a wild animal. Waves exploded against the sides of the ship. The sailors shouted, struggling to keep their balance as the ship shook violently. Barrels rolled across the deck. The mast groaned as if it might snap. Rain poured from the sky like buckets of water being dumped from above, and lightning tore through the clouds like bright cracks in a dark curtain. Jonah slept deeply, unaware of the chaos, until a sailor shook him violently. "Wake up! Wake up! We are going to sink! Pray to your God, maybe he will help us." Startled, Jonah rubbed his eyes, his heart pounding as the floor beneath him swayed. When Jonah climbed onto the deck, the storm almost swallowed him. Water sprayed in every direction, sailors were crying out in fear, and the ship creaked like it was breaking apart. The captain, trembling, shouted, "Someone on this ship is the cause of this disaster. Someone has angered a mighty God." The sailors agreed to cast lots, a way of choosing at random to find out who was responsible. Jonah watched as the small stones rolled on the deck and pointed directly at him. The sailor's eyes grew wide. Jonah felt his heart sink like a stone into deep water. He stepped forward slowly, rain streaming down his face, and said with a shaking voice, "It's me. I am running away from the God who made the sea and the land. The storm is because of me." Shocked and afraid, the sailors backed away. "What should we do to you?" they asked. Jonah swallowed hard. He knew there was only one answer: "Throw me into the sea," he whispered, "and the storm will stop." The sailors hesitated. They did not want to hurt him, but the storm grew stronger, waves towering like mountains, smashing against the ship. With tears in their eyes, they lifted Jonah and tossed him into the roaring waters. The moment Jonah touched the sea, everything changed. The storm stopped instantly, the wind quieted, and the waves smoothed out like calm glass. The sailors gasped in amazement, some falling to their knees in awe of Jonah's God. Meanwhile, Jonah sank deeper into the ocean, his clothes heavy, bubbles swirling around him as he sank like a stone. He tried to swim, but fear gripped him. Darkness wrapped around him like a blanket. Jonah felt like this was the end, until suddenly, from the shadows of the deep, something enormous moved. A massive fish, larger than anything Jonah had ever imagined, swam swiftly toward him with a wide opening mouth. Before Jonah could scream, the creature swallowed him whole. Everything went dark. Inside the belly of the giant fish, Jonah found himself surrounded by warm, squishy walls that pulsed gently like a giant heartbeat. It didn't smell very pleasant like old seaweed and salty water, but Jonah was alive. Alive! Inside a fish! He tried to stand, slipped, and fell. He tried to call out, but his voice echoed strangely. In the darkness, Jonah trembled. He hugged his knees and whispered, "God, I'm sorry. I disobeyed you. I was scared. I ran away. But you still saved me. You still kept me alive." Time inside the fish felt strange, like days and nights blended together. Jonah prayed and prayed, tears streaming down his face as he remembered God's mercy. "I will obey you," he promised softly. "Wherever you send me, I will go." With every word Jonah whispered, the walls around him seemed to warm gently, as if God was listening closely, comforting him even in the belly of a giant sea creature. After 3 long days and 3 long nights, Jonah felt the fish shake. The creature swam upward, faster and faster, closer to the sunlight shining through the water. Jonah held on tightly as the fish raced to the surface, and suddenly, whoosh, spat Jonah out onto a sandy beach with a powerful burst of water. Jonah rolled onto the warm sand, coughing, drenched, but alive. He lay there breathing hard, staring at the bright blue sky, feeling the sun warming his face. Above him, gentle waves washed onto the shore, and seagulls cried in the distance. Jonah pushed himself up slowly, wiping seaweed from his hair, exhausted but filled with relief and wonder. God had given him a second chance. Jonah stood, looking toward the distant road that led to Nineveh, knowing exactly what he needed to do next. Jonah stood on the warm sand for a long moment, breathing in the fresh air and listening to the waves whisper behind him, feeling the weight of what had just happened settle in his heart. He was alive. God had rescued him from the storm, from the deep, and even from the belly of a giant fish. And now, with trembling but determined steps, Jonah began walking toward Nineveh, the city he once feared and ran away from. He was still a young man in his late 20s, full of life and energy, but now he walked with a new kind of strength, not from his body, but from his faith. As he moved along dusty paths, past fields of wheat and small villages, Jonah whispered prayers under his breath. "God, give me courage. Help me speak your message. Stay with me." Days turned into nights, and nights into days, and Jonah walked through sunshine, breezes, and the cool glow of stars until, eventually, in the distance, he saw it. Nineveh. A massive city surrounded by tall stone walls that stretched as far as the eye could see. Towers climbed into the sky, people moved in crowds, markets buzzed with loud voices and bright colors. Jonah felt his stomach twist again, but this time, he didn't run. He stepped forward. As Jonah entered the city gates, he saw the bustling life of Nineveh up close, children laughing and chasing each other, merchants calling out their products, animals tied to posts, and people rushing in every direction. But he also saw things that made his heart ache. People shouting angrily, others pushing each other aside. dishonesty in the markets, and choices that hurt others. Jonah knew this was why God sent him, even though it had once terrified him. The city was huge, so large it would take 3 days to walk from one end to the other. But Jonah didn't wait. He walked straight into the busy center of the city and lifted his voice, feeling God helping him speak. "People of Nineveh," he shouted, "God is calling you. You must stop doing wrong things and change your ways. If you don't, trouble will come to this city soon. But if you turn to God, He will forgive you." People turned and stared. Some were surprised, others laughed nervously. But many looked curious. This young man with sea-dried hair and a voice full of courage was saying something different, something powerful. Jonah kept walking through the city, shouting the message God had given him. His words echoed off the stone walls, children peeked around corners, parents whispered, merchants stopped their work just to listen. Soon, Jonah's message spread faster than he could speak it. People began telling their families, neighbors, and even visitors about the strange young man who said God wanted them to change their ways. The more they heard Jonah's voice, the more their hearts began to soften. They felt guilt, sadness, and a longing to be better. And something amazing happened, something Jonah never expected. The people started to listen, truly listen. Men and women put down what they were doing, closed their shops, and gathered in large groups to talk about how they had treated others. Some hugged and apologized, others cried quietly. Even rulers and wealthy leaders stopped to hear Jonah's message. But the most surprising moment came when the message reached the palace. The king of Nineveh, a strong and important leader who wore long golden robes and a tall crown, heard about Jonah's warning. Instead of ignoring it or getting angry, he stood from his throne, walked down the steps, and removed his royal crown as a sign of humility. "If this message is from God," the king said, "then we must listen." The king sent messengers throughout the entire city with a new order. Everyone must stop doing wrong things. Everyone must pray to God with a sincere heart. Let us change our bad ways. Maybe God will show mercy to us. The whole city listened. Even the animals were kept from their food as a sign of respect and seriousness. People knelt in the streets, in their homes, and in the markets, lifting their hands and crying out for forgiveness. It was an incredible sight. More than 100,000 people, young and old, rich and poor, all turning their hearts toward God. Jonah watched all this with wide eyes. He couldn't believe it. He had expected people to ignore him, laugh at him, or chase him out. Instead, they listened. They truly wanted to change. And God saw all of this. God saw their tears, their new choices, their desire to be better. And God, who is full of kindness and mercy, gently lifted his judgment from the city and decided not to bring destruction upon Nineveh. But Jonah, instead of celebrating, felt confused. After everything he went through, the storm, the fish, the long journey, he expected the city to face punishment. "God," Jonah cried out, "this is why I ran away. I knew you would forgive them. I knew you are kind and full of love, and you show mercy." Jonah felt frustrated. Part of him wanted the people to learn a hard lesson. Feeling upset, he left the city and walked to a quiet hillside overlooking Nineveh. He built a small shelter from sticks and sat under it, watching the city below. The sun grew hotter and hotter, burning Jonah's skin and making him feel faint. But even in Jonah's frustration, God cared for him. God caused a leafy plant with wide, cool leaves to grow beside Jonah. Its shade covered him like a natural umbrella, and Jonah felt relieved. The breeze cooled him, and he finally relaxed, enjoying the comfort. "Thank you, God," he whispered, feeling gratitude for the first time that day. But the next morning, God sent a tiny worm that chewed at the stem of the plant. The plant withered quickly, leaving Jonah in harsh sunlight again. The wind blew hot and dry, and Jonah felt miserable all over again. He complained, saying, "God, it's better for me to die than to sit here like this." Then God spoke gently to Jonah, teaching him a lesson of love so deep that Jonah would never forget it. "Jonah," God said, "you are upset about this plant. though you did nothing to make it grow. Yet you want me not to care about this great city of Nineveh? There are more than 100,000 people there, and many animals too. Should I not care for them? Jonah slowly looked at the city below. Children playing, families working together, people trying to live better lives. And he understood. God's love wasn't just for one town or one group of people. God's love was for everyone. Jonah realized he had been given a second chance inside the belly of the fish, and now Nineveh had been given one too. God cared for them all. The wind eased. Jonah breathed deeply, finally feeling peace fill his heart. Over time, Jonah walked back into Nineveh, where many recognized him and greeted him with gratitude. Parents hugged him, children tugged at his robe, excited to see the man who brought them God's message. Jonah smiled something warm and real. He realized God had used him to save an entire city. And even though the journey had been frightening and confusing, God had been with him every step of the way. The sea, the storm, the fish, the journey, the message, the plant. Everything had been a lesson about God's great compassion. Jonah returned home a changed man, not perfect, but wiser, braver, and filled with a deeper understanding of God's love. He never forgot the darkness inside the fish or the blazing sun on the hillside. He never forgot Nineveh's tears or God's gentle voice. He never forgot the lesson that God's mercy is bigger than fear, bigger than mistakes, and bigger than all the oceans in the world. And even long after Jonah grew older and shared his story with children, neighbors, and travelers, the tale of Jonah and the giant fish lived on as a reminder that no one is too far for God to reach. No mistake is too big for God to forgive, and no heart is too hard for God to soften. Jonah's life became a story of second chances, and his message continues to echo across lands and generations, teaching that God's love is for everyone, everywhere, forever.